Hello lovelies, hello families. This is Kimberly Purpoz and welcome to my channel. Today I want to do another video about the American Aborigines, but this time I believe this article is about the people of Canada, but it says why Aboriginal people can't just get over it. And it says here, understanding and addressing intergenerational trauma. I stumbled upon this scholarly journal article, and I thought it was quite interesting. Even though it pertains to Canada, I believe that a lot of this can also be pertaining to us as well, to some of the things that we have experienced as well. I'm not sure if it went over the slavery part as in this particular article. I might, but this is my first time reading it, and so I'm going to read it with you guys. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to read the whole thing. I'll probably be part of it, and we'll discuss exactly what this article is about. This article was written by Jeffrey J. Schaefer, and it was published in Indigenous People Issues of Vision Journal, and it was published in 2016. The reason why I wanted to touch on this article because a lot of people who have not experienced the same life circumstances and historic atrocities such as the American Aborigines have a difficult time understanding and relating as to why we still have a hard time getting over these past traumas. And I also thought it was interesting. There was another doctor who wrote about the post-traumatic slave syndrome, and that's another, mental health issue that a lot of Indigenous Aborigines are still facing, because it's like an open wound that has never healed, because we as the people has never taken the time to sit down and actually address these issues that took place in the past. It's just pretty much been swept under the rug, and many people have just pretty much overlooked it. And also with American Aborigines, we don't, the AKA African Americans, don't go to counselors or psychologists like we should to look into past hurts and atrocities and finding ways in healing and overcoming these things, because oftentimes it's seen as being a weakness. But people don't realize that sometimes getting the help that they need in addressing these past pains, what happened to your ancestors a long time ago, still affects us today. I did a video, y'all might want to check it out. I talked about how there's ancestral wounds that's passed down through DNA, and there's a doctor that has this research on it. I believe it was published in PBS, but y'all may want to check out that video. I did that about a year ago, and the thing is, we still have these issues that happened in the past, and they need addressed. And I think with us learning who we are and learning about our ancestry and studying history and actually piecemealing what actually took place, and learning that we need to look past the illusion of indoctrination and learn things for ourselves and do more research and more digging, we start to open up the journey of healing, in itself. Just learning your identity is a step in the right direction towards healing from past hurts and pains that's been passed down intergenerationally from from throughout history, pretty much hundreds of years. But let me go on. Let's go ahead and start this article. It's here. The political climate of Canada is changing. Shortly after the historic release of The Truth, the Consolidation Commission finally reported in 2015, Canadians elected a new prime minister committed to repairing the relationship between Aboriginal people and the Canadian state within the past year. There has been significant shift in the status quo from deep-rooted attitudes and stereotypes that question why Aboriginal people can't simply get over it, to understanding the intergenerational impact of colonization and a commitment to truth and reconciliation as a nation project for all Canadians. In the words of Truth and Reconciliation Commission, reconciliation is about establishing and maintaining mutual respect relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people in the country. Okay, I found this quite interesting. I think it's great that they are, I think this is a good mark, a good, I'm glad the government is actually, look like they are actually acknowledging that the Indigenous people have suffered from past hurt and want to learn and build a bridge in the relationship. I'm not sure how genuine it is, but I do think that's a great, good step in the right direction. Now, I noticed that Canada Aborigines, they look like they were mostly Mongoloids. I'm not sure how true it is. I know that it's closer to Siberia, where they originate from. So I wouldn't be surprised that the Mongoloids would be concentrated up there in Canada because it's not too far from the Siberian Strait. The Google search, I believe they have most of the Mongoloid looking type Indians as being Aboriginal up there. But I have to do some research. I'm not sure if there was the darker complexion Aborigines there in Canada like it is here in the Americas, like they are part of the Americas, but right here in the United States, definitely in the Southeast Woodlands they were American Aboriginal because they were capturing slaves. But I did do some research in Canada. I got some more articles that I'm going to probably share with you. I'm not sure we're going to have time in this video to share with you about Canada, how they too had captured some of the Indigenous people in Canada as well. And they had 200 years of slavery during colonialization over there in Canada as well. But we're not going to go into that in this video. But I just wanted to let you all know that there was slavery in Canada. As I don't know for those who don't know. And that they were capturing some of the Indigenous people there too. And they say that they did bring over some Africans. I'm not sure how many, but I know in the United States it wasn't nearly as much as they claim. It was very few. They captured more of the Indigenous people in the Americas. They really did. And I'm not sure if it's the same way in Canada as it is in the United States, but I'm going to do some research because it's an interesting topic and I want to find out more. But let's continue this article. We're just going to read a few of the paragraphs and then, I'm not going to try to read this whole thing. It's sort of long too. So let's go into this next part. It says the colonization of North America attempts to assimilate Aboriginal people into settlers. Europeans' way of living. Settler policies and attitudes meant that Aboriginal people were cut from their traditional culture, languages, spirituality, economies, systems of governance, and other important parts of their identity. Understanding Canada's colonial history and debunking the racist myths that run through Canadian society is an important part of truth and reconciliation process. Oh my gosh, this author is correct. Yes, it's a lot of racism and stereotypes when it comes to Indigenous history. throughout the Americas, there's a lot of brainwashing too, especially. They tried to have the false narratives that it was only Mongoloids here, but in actuality, Australianoids was also here as well, who were oftentimes reclassified as being black here in the Americas, and look like they followed a lot of the same thing, patterns of behavior in Canada as they did here in the United States, because it seems very similar. And also they did the same thing in Australia, but Australia colonization happened later than it did here in the Americas. But let's continue. It says, unfortunately, discrediting myths and negative stereotypes is not the only challenge we face. The legacy of colonization has affected the daily lives of millions of Canadians across many generations and continues to affect the practical, everyday existence of millions today. Increased understanding does not necessarily provide us with the concrete tools for making changes. So I like the fact that he was saying, unfortunately, discrediting myths and stereotypes is not the only challenge we face. It's just the generational mindset. It's hard. And I don't think it's hard. I think it can be done. I think they can first start with the histories and the writings and the teachings that's taught in school. Because a lot of this started with the indoctrination process that they did with flooding the schools with false narratives from day one, when they had the indigenous people go to school, how the kids go to school. That's when indoctrination started. And that's when the Great Washington history book started, teaching these false stories and false narratives in order to erase the true identity of the indigenous Aborigines out of history altogether. But anyway, like I said, I'm still doing some research. I'm not sure about Canada, so I'm going to have to do some more research about Canada history. But I do have some more articles that we can touch on right here. Let me see if I still have it up. I'm going to bring you guys with me. I stopped on research. Dr. Joy, she the one who wrote the book about the post-traumatic slave syndrome and about the study guide, which goes into detail about how to, first identifying that the fact that a lot of the indigenous people who of the Americas from the transatlantic slave trade, which is pretty much been told to us in reverse, that there is an issue, a mental health crisis issue that definitely is taking place and affects everyone intergenerationally. So that's why it's very important to we oftentimes overlook it, because oftentimes we see it as a weakness and to get these kind of helps. But as more research is done and studies are showing that a lot of times this is intergenerational. Some studies are showing that it's passed down through generations, and that's why we are suffering a lot of the mental health issues that we're facing today, is because we have not had a chance to actually heal ourselves from these problems. But I will probably do a more video for about Dr. Joy and her theory and her research on the post-traumatic slave syndrome. But I wanted to mention her. But I believe I had another article. I'm gonna bring that over here. I'm sorry. I don't think I have it up. Here it is. This is it. But here's the article. This is the article on the colonial Canadian had slavery for more than 200 years, and yes, it still matters today. This is what I wanted. This article right here supports and tells you. I just want to make sure you all know that there was slavery in Canada as well. And this article, I got a chance to read through it a little bit, And it mentions too that a lot of the indigenous people were captured. They try to say it was only a few, but a lot of times they do that to throw you off with indoctrination. They don't want the true identity of the real indigenous people to be identified. They did that all over the United States. And I'm pretty sure they're doing it here, in Canada too. Even though I think it's great that they're at least acknowledging that, it is a problem. But that it actually took place and that it is an issue, that a lot of indigenous people are having a hard time recovering from these, I say like 400 years, 400 or 500 years of being, of this indoctrination that took place, and how lands, rights, and has been stolen, how were captured into slavery and they have received free labor, and how we have never been have never been paid for it, But let's see. I'm not going to do this article. We're going to go back to this research study that was doing, but I just want to share that article with you because I want to, we'll probably do that one later. We're going to get back on point, but I just wanted to show you that there's definitely truth in that there was slavery there in Canada as well, and that some of the indigenous people were captured. And I have to research how many Africans were sent over to Canada, but I know here in the United States it was not nearly as many as they claim, because they want to they don't want to admit that the African Americans are indigenous here. So I'm not sure if they're trying to do the same thing in Canada. I'm going to do more research, but I know that there were also some indigenous people captured in slavery in Canada as well, according to the article that I just showed you, that mentioned that some of the indigenous people were captured along with the so-called Africans. But my theory is there were not that many Africans, because why would you go all the way to Africa when you can just get people that's already there? And I also, from a lot of the readings I've studied, a lot of people, the indigenous people from the Caribbean, were shipped over all over the Americas as well. So when they reclassified them, they just put them down as being black, as opposed to putting the accurate depiction of what the indigenous people were. It was a way of not declassifying them so they can try the Greys have to have justification for stealing lands that's not theirs. But it says here, research shows that the consequences of trauma are not limited to the person immediately exposed to the trauma event. People close to the individuals may experience vicarious trauma, which can have impact similar to the impacts of personal experienced trauma. The concept of vicarious trauma emerged in the 1960s from the studies of prolonged effects of Holocaust or survivors and their families. This area of research now includes survivors of natural disasters, Japanese internment camps, and then wars, Indian residential schools, and child abuse. Intergenerational trauma is any trauma, including historical oppression, that has an impact across more than one generation. This impact includes shared collective memories that affect the health and well-being of individuals and communities that may be passed from parent to child and beyond. And see, these are the ancestral wounds that I was talking about. These wounds are passed down from generation to generation and has never been healed. And ours go further back. They mention the Japanese, but hey, the American Aborigines, the AKA African Americans, has experienced even more, 400, 500 years worth. And it has been passed down, and that's part of the reason why still we suffer from the oppression, because we never healed from the past wounds of the past. And so more research is showing that it is being passed down, and that's why it has a rippling effect. You know, they during slavery, the family was always broken up. You know, the child was always taken from the from the family, and it was always broken up. And so that's why it's in, you know, it, a child was taken away from the mother, the father was pulled from the home, and it is still today with the prison system sending our American Aboriginal men to jail for prison for nonviolent offense for extremely long time, you know, for a time that is not warranted for the crime. You know, for example, a person might go to prison for maybe marijuana charge, having marijuana, carrying marijuana, and they might be in jail for 40 years. No, that's quite excessive, you know, charge against a person for a crime that was very minor, you know. And they done this and when you do your research, you realize that during, you know, this goes back to colonialization, you know. They had all these crazy laws to have excuse for locking people up, to imprisoning them and enslaving them. And really technically the people, you know, especially the American Aborigines, when they went fought during the Indian Wars, I'm talking about here in the United States. You know, they captured a lot of the indigenous people and called them prisoners, but in actuality, the question is, what happened to these people? What happened to them? Did they go to prison or what? And usually what happened was that they actually instead became actual slaves, in other words. But yeah, that's usually what happens and everything. I'm going to make this be the conclusion of this video because this is a lengthy article. You guys, I just wanted to touch on it, but seems like a really great article explaining exactly what took place and why a lot of American Aborigines are having a hard time recovering from these past atrocities. It's because there has been very little effort in understanding and addressing these intergenerational traumas that have taken place. But I will be putting a link to this particular article at the end of this video. And please like this video, thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. And till next time, family, peace, love and peace. Bye-bye.